Hi, everyone. Welcome to Small Talk. I'm excited today because this is like a whole new interview, which is always so much fun. My guest today is the Media Liaison Officer for the Surrey Police Service. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to meet Ian MacDonald. Ian, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Well, I'm pleased that you're able to do it. I just want to go back in time. You decided to become a police officer, right?
That's true. I actually had a career. I was an administrative manager for a food and beverage company for about just shy of a decade.
Right.
And one of the clients that I had at that time was the Benevolent Association for the Vancouver Police Department. And so when I was kind of getting tired of caring whether people bought Coke or Pepsi, one of the fellows at VPD said, "Hey, I think you'd make a decent police officer. Have you given it any thought?" And I actually said, "Not until you mentioned it." And now I'm thinking about it. And so shortly thereafter, I started doing some running and getting into physical shape to sort of make the grade, investigating the job a little bit more. And then I started putting feelers out at 3 different places: VPD, New West Police, and Abbotsford. And Abbotsford drew the short straw and they got me.
Was it difficult going through the police academy?
Well, so I went through the police academy at age 31, so I was a little bit older than most of the recruits. Generally, in policing, the age of the recruits has increased over time. Most police agencies across Canada and maybe North America are looking for individuals that have more life experience, that are more well-rounded, have had to go through some hardship and challenges themselves. So gone are the days where, first of all, that it was a completely male-dominated profession.
Right.
And also gone, thankfully, are the days where if you were simply above 6 feet and 200 pounds, that you were an automatic in.
Right.
Now we're looking for, obviously, diversity. We want to reflect our communities. And on top of that, we're looking for skill sets that go beyond height and weight.
Very good. No, I think that's a great thing, with people with maturity, right? Because I think sometimes young people, I would say men, I'm not sure, probably anybody, but kind of sometimes they have this macho idea of what a policeman is. But if you have some maturity behind you, you don't quite have that same attitude, I would say.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think, experience is gained. It's not something that you can just tick the box and say, okay, well, I've taken 3 courses at university, therefore I'm experienced.
Right.
I think it's fair to ask that if you are going to be charged with going out into the community and solving other people's problems, or attempting to, that you would be able to solve your own. And so the best way to demonstrate that is through your life experience. Very
good. Yeah. Now, you were a policeman in Abbotsford for 22 years, right?
I was, yeah. And I loved policing in Abbotsford. Large community, a lot of diversity there as well, lots of challenges. Through most of my career, sort of the gang issue was the major conflict that we had to continue to deal with.
Right.
I can remember being, a junior constable and kicking in door after door of illegal grow ops and sort of seeing, how that was affecting people's lives, how it was affecting neighborhoods, the impact, and just the abundance of those illegal marijuana grow ops.
Right.
And just for background for your audience, it was really the money that was made through those grow ops. For those that are maybe of the opinion that marijuana now legalized isn't that big a deal, that was the cash crop that enabled all of those gangs that sort of have notoriety, especially around the Fraser Valley, to actually gain their foothold and make bigger connections to larger criminal organizations. It was a bunch of predominantly younger people who got into the marijuana trade that ended up making connections with those larger organized crime groups. And they had to be taken seriously because A, they had crop, and B, they started to have a lot of money and influence. So yeah, it was interesting times for sure.
During any of those takedowns, was there any, did you ever come across any violence?
Yeah, I mean, inherent in all of it was violence. And so what we would commonly hear, again, for people that maybe evaluate the seriousness of something by, let's say, the effect of the drug.
Right.
I would argue that if organized crime and gangs are involved in it,
Mm-hmm.
it is amplified and it is exacerbated automatically to those levels of violence and exploitation.
Right.
And so, just speaking of the violence, you could be a minor drug user, but when it came collection time, the level of violence that was exerted on people with debts, or the strong arming that took place to try to encourage people to, become part of a gang,
Yeah.
or to distribute or sell drugs, it was disproportionate to what you can imagine. People with, say $100 or $200 debt
Mm-hmm.
would find themselves trapped and frequently subject to beatings,
Right.
as a way to gain compliance and gain the upper hand, and strangely enough, as a mechanism to try to create loyalty amongst gang members, or new initiatives to get gang members.
Right. Oh. Have you ever seen anybody go straight?
Yeah, so in the last 2 years of my career at APD, I really enjoyed my time as the media officer there. There was a lot of murder and mayhem. There was a lot of police involved matters.
Yes.
But probably the most rewarding time that I spent at APD were the final 2 years that I had there, where I was involved in 2 outreach programs. One that was the equivalent to like a Big Brothers, Big Sisters campaign, where we connected with middle school kids.
Right.
We found real bright, positive lights in the community, most of them college students or college age students, to help mentor young people who maybe had a little bit of a wobble that was identified by their families or sometimes by the school district. And the rewards that you get by seeing somebody really take on the positive attributes of their mentor,
Yes.
and follow a path that is going to bring them to success. The reward is just it's off the charts.
Yeah.
The other one is you mentioned, did I ever see anybody go straight? I was involved from day one with Project Angel, which was a government-funded initiative. When I say government-funded, this isn't a slight on the government, but because it was a pilot project, the funding was $100 grand. And with that $100 grand, we ended up employing 15 individuals who had lived experience.
Okay.
People who were formerly street entrenched, people who formerly were substance users, and had found a way to, with some assistance or sometimes by themselves and their own determination, had found a way out of those traps and had started to put building blocks together for a more successful trajectory.
Right.
And so what we did with that project is we took people with lived experience and made them the frontline connections for people who were trying to, let's say, get rid of their substance challenges, or let's say were caught in that trap where they felt either disenfranchised,
Yes.
or were currently homeless, or were having difficulties connecting with either loved ones or community services, or sometimes just people that needed someone to listen to and a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
We took all comers, and whatever anyone's challenge was, if they resided in the city of Abbotsford, we had a very dedicated group of 15 people that would go out and meet them and see if we could assist them with their challenge. And through that, we took people to treatment centers. We saw people become absolute 180-degree successes where they previously were just sort of hitting their head against the wall. We reconnected individuals with families, and I saved the best for last. Without a doubt, we saved lives.
Awesome.
And so I'm super proud of that program.
Very good. Yeah. And I was just thinking about like little kids. Have you, when you were on the police force, did you ever go into the schools where I'm talking about the real young kids? They seem to have a real love of policemen,
Yeah. So one of the jokes that I used to tell is that at a certain age, the kids will wave at a police car and at a police officer with all the fingers on their hand, and then there's a point in time where they'll just wave with just the one finger. But I have to say that my experience in Abbotsford was overwhelmingly positive. We were in the schools a lot, always working with the school district and by invitation. but our reception, regardless of the topic, was always extremely well received. And from the parents advisory committees through to the administration and the school district and the school trustees, a lot of support for the police department.
Right.
And we always, seem to have an open door to the schools. And I think that is an absolute necessity and a positive attribute for any city if you want to be successful.
Very good. Yeah. Now, at some point after 22 years, you became the media relations officer?
Yeah. So what ends up happening is in my APD days, I was minding my own business, and we had an outgoing media relations officer. And he actually stopped by my office on a couple of occasions and said, "Hey, I'm not going to be doing this job any longer, and I think it would be a really good fit for you." I think I was probably at about year 10 of my 22 out in Abbotsford. And every time he came by my office, you can pick the language that's most appropriate for your audience. But I told him in no uncertain terms repeatedly that I was not interested in the job whatsoever.
Right.
And one of the reasons that I gave is that my language can at times be very colorful. And I didn't know that if people turned cameras on or held a microphone to me that I'd be able to hold back all the time, because I'm a fairly emotional, hard on my sleeve kind of person. Okay. And I said, and the other attribute that I don't have that normally you're looking for in a police spokesperson in particular is I'm a talker. And so, a lot of police spokespeople are short sentences. They give you the facts and they don't offer a lot of other things. And I'm always the person that likes to tell stories, and I like to create scenarios, and I like to walk people through so that there's a level of understanding. So basically I said no, and I didn't think I'd be a good fit. And that answer lasted for about a month until I got called to the deputy chief's office. And so I was sat down there, and then he explained to me that the chief at the time, Bob Rich, very much thought that I would be a good fit for the job. And so when you have a colleague telling you you'd be a good fit, you can, even using colorful language, you can explain to them that you're not interested. When you hear from the deputy chief that the chief wants you to do the gig, you take the gig. And so I didn't know how it would go, but I thought, if the chief wants me to try it, I'm going to try it. And I ended up staying in that position for almost 9 years. And so the regular tenure for a media relations officer is 4 years.
Oh, okay.
Bob kept me in that gig for as long as he possibly could, because I think we worked really well together. And to this day, he's been one of the greatest influences on me as a person, as well as on my career. I have nothing but respect for retired Chief Rich.
Very nice. Yeah, that sounds awesome. And now you were named a Police Leader of the Year by Blue Line magazine, obviously a police magazine, right?
Right. Yeah. No, it wasn't People magazine, but it was in the policing world, especially in Canada. It was a big deal, and it was absolutely an honor. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of cool. Just I'm not a big. I actually am a kind of person that has difficulties even at birthday parties that are thrown for me. Like, people think that if you're a media relations officer or you're a spokesperson in any capacity that you like the spotlight. I actually dislike it quite a bit. I can
read totally.
There you go, Nancy. So awards is another thing that I have a lot of difficulty with. I can go to other people's celebrations and I'm comfortable. I love cheering on other people, but when the attention's focused back at me, I struggle a little bit. But I will admit that the part that I liked about it was sort of the legacy piece for my kids. So, being able to show your kids, or down the line for them to have a keepsake that's dad on the cover of a magazine or a plaque or whatever. I look more as a legacy piece. Yeah. Maybe a little bit of mentoring there in terms of, work hard and you'll be recognized. Yeah. But I didn't go into 2014 or 2015 thinking that I was going to win anything. That wasn't the reason for me to show up to work.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I don't know how you feel about it, but I get invited to events and I can't go because I have social anxiety, right? Yeah. And sometimes when I get compliments about doing this, I almost feel like, am I faking it, or is it real?
Yeah, and the funny thing is, like, I seriously look at conversations like I'm having with you as just me to you.
Yes.
And I recognize that you have an audience, but it's the same. Like if Global TV or CTV or CBC shows up with a camera, I'm actually having a conversation with the reporter, generally with the reporter and the camera operator.
Right.
But I never take it further than that. I always just imagine you're asking me questions, human being to human being, and I'm answering the questions.
Yeah.
And now you can bring in an audience or you can be absence of an audience. My answers are going to be the same. And so sometimes people go, well, how can you handle, knowing that there are X number of people watching on TV? And I go, because I never think about anybody watching on TV. I just think about the conversation that I'm in.
It's like when I do them in person, that's the same thing, the guest will say, do I look at you or look at the camera? I say, no, you're talking to me.
Right.
So yeah. I quite understand that. Now, you at some point you retired, right?
Yes. And I was really good at being retired, Nancy. Like I was really good at it. So it wasn't a scenario where my wife and I were driving each other crazy or I was puttering around the house looking for something to do. And there had been a couple of opportunities for me in retirement to come out of retirement, and I had given them an absolute hard pass. Like I did my pension calculation accurately. And so it wasn't, for financial need. And it wasn't, like I said, because I was driving my spouse crazy or my kids.
Right.
I ended up getting a phone call from somebody who I have a lot of respect for and who I'd been friends with for about a decade, who told me that she had moved from Surrey RCMP over to the new Surrey Police Service. And it just started out as well, good for you. Congratulations. Awesome is portable and you are going to be awesome there. I just know it. And then she hit me with well, you're retired, but would you come out of retirement? And almost like those initial conversations with my colleague back at APD, the answer was, no, not interested. Keep walking. And she said, well, just, would you be open to talking about it more? And I thought at the time, it's a zero risk opportunity for me. We can talk about it, but I'm good at being retired. I just didn't predict that within one more conversation, I would have essentially verbally committed myself to this new gig. I have no regrets about it. So
very good. Well, how long had you been retired at that point?
I'd been retired for a year.
Oh, okay.
So I think maybe 15 months in retirement before I came out of retirement and started with SPS. And in fairness, as much respect and admiration as I have for this individual, like I would have met them for coffee and given them whatever secrets I had if I could give any insight into what was going on. But my other motivating factor is that Surrey is my hometown. Like I worked in Abbotsford for 22 years, but as a commuter, and I was very connected to the community. I volunteered in Abbotsford, but I grew up in Surrey. Like I went to from grade school through to graduating from Queen Elizabeth High School in Surrey. My kids are Surrey school graduates. They went the same thing. And I've lived in Surrey for most of my life. So the opportunity to build a police service from the ground up was just way too much of an opportunity for me to pass on. So
what does your position entail?
Well, talking to people like you, I realize you're unique, Nancy, so I don't want to put you in a category, but whenever anybody reaches out and is looking for comment from the Surrey Police Service, it'll either be myself as the spokesperson, or it'll be Chief Lipinski, or we have Sergeant Jag Kosa, who does a lot of interaction with South Asian media. Okay. We have really made it our responsibility to ensure that when people reach out for information or reach out for comment or have questions, that we don't hit the ignore button. We want to be respectful of their time. Yeah. We also want to be responsive, and we want them to know that we have a sense of urgency about the need for information to be shared. Right. And so that's part of the reason that I'm here. Like if they said, Ian, we want to bring you out of retirement, but the way that you did things for a decade in Abbotsford, we don't want you to do anymore. We don't want you to be camera available, and we don't want you to be doing interviews or anything like that. Right. I'd say not a good fit.
Yeah.
So what I can tell you is, after being here for just shy of a year, it's a really good fit because it's exactly what I was doing in terms of that immediacy and that connection and relationship with media organizations and the public that I had when I was in Abbotsford.
Isn't it wonderful to be able to do something you enjoy?
It really is. And so I'm going to offer one other thing that that is unique about this Surrey Police Service experience. Everybody here is so positive, and that's not a slight on APD.
Right.
But what I will say is APD from 2015 until I retired, unfortunately, was beset with a disproportionate amount of tragedy. We had officers killed in the line of duty. We had personal tragedies that affected members and their families.
Yeah.
Just losses. And so what I will say is I am glad that APD and SPS put such a priority on employee wellness, because you just don't know. And it's a tough industry to begin with, but when it's exacerbated by those challenges internally in the organization, it can be really hard sledding to motivate yourself, not because you don't care for people, but there's a lot of weight that comes with tragedy and grief, and even the memorials, right? Like when the memorials come around, and I know people will understand this from their personal lives, those days can be hard. And when you're working in a work environment, you already have personal tragedies that maybe you struggle with from time to time throughout the year. Now you have work-related tragedies that you have to commemorate or feel guilt about not commemorating in the right way.
Yeah.
And so coming over to SPS, thankfully it's a little bit of a clean slate. And so everybody is looking forward to the building of SPS and becoming the police of jurisdiction for Surrey. But we're in early enough days, thankfully, that we don't have a lot of those incidents yet that will, have an effect on the membership and the civilian staff. It will come. It's just part of the nature of the work. But as of right now, we can all be very positively focused and super optimistic every day we come into work.
Just think about when you're talking about the tragedies, like when an officer gets killed, it must send a wave through all the police forces, right? It
does. And, I hate to say it, but I think there is a connection. Like there's been a real shift. And I'm not, the Norman Rockwell hearkening back to those days. I'm just saying that even in what is a relatively brief career of 22 years, from when I started to when I retired, there has been a real change in sort of the public's view of police officers. And I'm not saying that that's the public's fault. There have been numerous examples of police officers obviously not helping the cause. But my point simply is that a lot of people who are distraught or distressed, more often now, are looking to a police officer to either get into a conflict with, or to do a suicide by cop, or as the target for their anger or whatever. And I certainly know that, in the case of John Davidson, here is a police officer that's just responding to what should have been just a report of a stolen car. And for him to be shot and killed, it's a disproportionate amount of violence for the nature of the incident. And in my mind, I'm not speaking to the courts or anything else, but in my mind, it's an intentional effort by the part of an individual to engage with a police officer or maybe multiple police officers in a shootout. And unfortunately, there's tons of examples of that now, predominantly in North America, but across the globe, where people are bringing guns to fights with police. And so it's something that we have to be always ready and always alert about.
Yeah, it's got to be a scary job for sure, as well as rewarding. I can understand, I'm not really understand because I've never been in that position, but although I have had somebody point a loaded shotgun at me.
Yeah, well, see, and that's part of it, right? Like if you've been in that circumstance, two things I would suggest, and I'm not speaking on your behalf, Nancy, but when you've been in that circumstance, you immediately understand the need for police. Sure. And so some people who, may be arguing, oh, you know what, police aggravate the problem. They don't actually provide a lot of solutions. I can give you example upon example of every call that we attend, that the officers who attend are absolutely trying to provide a solution to what may be a temporary but very volatile situation. And the unfortunate thing is we are only there basically to calm things down and to restore order. We're not there for the longer term to maybe fix someone's life. And that's what goes back to what I was talking about, where the community engagement pieces, whether it's Project Angel or a Big Brothers Big Sisters program, is there for the longer term. Emergency response, whether it's police, fire, or ambulance, is there to deal with the emergency.
Yeah.
And then hopefully the individual, and maybe with some support, can connect through to the other things that will help bring order to their lives for a more lasting period of time. But you're 100% right. The job, first responders job, isn't for everybody.
Yeah.
But for those who are in it, they absolutely do find reward from it, where they wouldn't do it.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned your children. Are any of them in the police force?
Well, so my daughter graduated from film school. She's the artsy kid.
Okay. Yeah.
So she's into photography. She's into filmmaking. She's into visual arts. And I got to tell you, as a father, I'm so happy that that's the path that she's chosen.
Sure.
And I've never kind of directed my kids to take, this tact or that. When they were younger, especially my son, he very much wanted to be a police officer. Now he's leaning more towards carpentry. Oh, and I am absolutely thrilled with that. Yeah. He's also a scuba diver, and he runs his own yard care company. Okay. And he's 17.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so he's a go-getter kid. And so again, regardless of the career he ultimately chooses, if he ends up being a Red Seal carpenter, perfect. If he ends up being a scuba diver, perfect. If he ends up becoming a small business operator and an entrepreneur, perfect. As long as my kids are happy, and as long as they are positively impacting, their lives and their family and their communities, that's all I could ask. That's all I'm looking for.
Very nice. Yeah. And it's like, I say to people, like, whatever job you do, if that's what you decided to do it well and take pride in it. Doesn't matter what the job is, right?
Agreed. Yeah. And so I know that, there are some individuals who, maybe steer their kids towards whatever they have done. Yes. Could be the family business, could be policing, could be whatever. Right. I've purposely tried not to do that. I just want my kids to be happy and to find happiness. But like I said, with the caveat that they have to be positively affecting others. And so the one thing that I have been more direct with my kids is in doing volunteer work, making sure that they understand that not everything that you do has to be rewarded with a paycheck.
Right.
You can derive reward from volunteering, from helping others, for a whole array of things, where at the end of the day, it doesn't put cash in your pocket.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. I volunteered to do this. I would like to get paid, but but with that said, we're out of time. Okay. This has been really great. I really, really appreciate you coming and doing this. It was very informative. I'm just going to say goodbye to the audience. So just hold on for a second, okay? Everybody, I hope you enjoyed listening to Ian MacDonald. Again, as I said, it's very informative, and it is can be a high stressful job when you're a policeman, like going to, as he said, to grow ups and that. I know it's a different world than when I grew up, and it can be a harsh world, but we have to show respect for people who are doing their job with integrity. And that's what they do. So anyway, that being said, enough of the lecture. Thank you for watching. I hope you subscribe, and peace out, everyone.